All right, so today I'm going to be starting on this pig. I'm not completely done with this pig. I've done what I'd call my first pass at him, and I will be coming back. I can see just looking at him that I want some more darkness to a lot of his dark patches. They're not dark enough, and so I'll be going back in with neutral tint to darken those up. And so my basic plan, and this is true of any animal, but this picture ends up being like 3 animal portraits because there are 3 little pigs. So most of the time I would do one animal. I would go over him the first time, and then I would come back and I would go over a second time, and then if I was happy with it, I would come back and do usually some gouache on animals. There's almost always some little hairs around the mouth, or whiskers, or eyelashes, or little ear hairs, or something that I just can't really do with the watercolor, not in a way that I'm happy with. So I come back with gouache to put that in. So that's my plan. Almost always is first color like this, then a first pass over the animal, then a second pass to darken it up, sometimes a third pass to make it even darker, and then gouache at the end to finish it up. So I'm going to be working on this pig today. It's actually been a day since I worked on these pigs at all because I didn't have time yesterday to paint. Also, we're having a thunderstorm right now, so if you hear thunder in the background, that'll be why. All right, this pig has a very pink nose. He doesn't have the like gray sections that this other pig had. So he's much more pink. And I did actually put an under layer of pink here, but you can barely see it anymore because it lightened so much when it dried. So he's got a little pink nose up to this area. I still have my paints in here from the last time I was working on pigs, and they I just re-wet them. I don't need to get new paint. So this nose, it's deeper in the middle, like where the nostrils are. It almost goes in, and then on the outer rim comes forward more. So I'm going to want a highlight. I can see a really clear highlight on the inspiration picture up there. And this pink is darker than I want it to be, but that's okay for the moment because I'm gonna spread it out and lighten it up. This highlight goes around the edge of his nose. You kind of have, here's the shape of his nose, and it comes around there. And the highlight is just going around the edge of it. So I'm not bringing the pink all the way to the edge for now. To fill in the pink down here, I'm just pulling pink from up there. Okay. right, I'm gonna go back and mess with the highlight in a bit. I don't really want to fool with that too much yet. But what I do want to do is I feel like the whole snout area should be a bit more pink on this guy. So except for that highlight, I'm just gonna do a quick wash of pink around here. Remember, this is not a dark pink. This is like a pink from a red. This is yellow ochre and quin red together to give me more of a peachy pink. That's going to read as more of a natural pink than if I were to pull pure pink out. All right, there's, let's see, on his little mouth here, there's a bit of a darker part of pink here, but there's a highlight on the top of the lip. So I'm leaving that. And I want to start to shade some of the inside of this nose, because again, it's almost like it comes in here and then this part is sticking out. So I want to make this middle look like it sinks down in. So using a little bit darker pink, still with the pink, but I've added some, just a little bit of sepia to it. Because to me, this shadowing looks a little more brown than it does black. Let's see. Let's make it even darker. Okay, before I can do too much more with that, I'm going to have to let it dry. It's always a thing with watercolor, is moving around a little bit between different parts of your painting, because something needs to dry and you can't fiddle with it too much during that time. I'm gonna put in this mouth line as it's dry down there. Like I've said many a time here, there are no just straight outlined lines like that in real life. It's going to look like a cartoon if you leave it that way. So I come back to it with a wet brush and I blend that out. That, and I lost a little bit of the highlight I wanted on his lower lip, so I come back in there and I can lift up a bit of that color to get a lighter area on that lower lip. Okay, this top part here also needs to blend up. So it's like, for this line, yes, I want a line where his snout ends, but I don't want a hard line. I want it to blend, because that will make the snout here look more rounded on the edge instead of just looking like, oop, it ends right there. That line doesn't really want to blend. I have to kind of attack it a little bit. Blending in. Okay. Now also on his bottom little chin area here, there's a shadow going underneath him like there is on this pig. And so that shadow is creeping up the chin, and we're going to use the shadow to kind of form the circular nature of his chin. So I'm going to want neutral tint. I mainly just use neutral tint in this shadow. Throw a little Payne's Gray in there. Okay, this is pretty dark. I'm going to confine the dark to a fairly close area on his body. And right here, all I can see are just some little hairs coming off of his chin. So I'll show you in a sec how I'm going to mess with those to try to make it look like hair there. But here I'm just going up alongside. It goes right alongside his little snout here. And then his face is kind of coming off that way into that. So I'm going to want to kind of blend into that. I'm going to get my big brush, because that'll give me a lot more water to work with here, and I'm going to blend this shadow down. I'm not going to worry about what goes over there into piggy number 3 quite yet, because I'm not there yet. Okay, and I'm going to deal with his little chin first. So the shadow needs to kind of come up like this to create a chin. Like that. And then it's going to be shadowed here on the bottom of his face and darker as it gets down towards the shadow, just by very nature of being there. So, kind of shadowing that. And this line is too harsh. I don't want it to be like, again, like there's just a straight line there. So we'll deal with that more in just a minute. I want it to dry a little bit. And while it's drying, I'm taking a 0 rigger, and I want to pull some of that black up this way as if it's hairs. Okay, so now he looks almost like those are hairs coming off of his chin, which is what they actually are. And when I come back to this and I'm making the hairs with the orange, we'll blend that in a little bit so that it'll look shaded. That'll all work out how I need it to later. All right, coming back to this chin shadow, I'm just gonna blend out the shadow with clean water. So now I'm seeing more of, okay, here's his mouth, here's where his chin sticks out a little bit more, and then below it, it goes in. We can make it go in even a little more by adding more shadow to that part of his face. Like that. I think that area right underneath him could be darker. So I'm going to pull a little more neutral tint. And I'm going to lay that shadow back in find in watercolor, black is hard to get really black. And so most of the time when you're doing something in black, you will have to put multiple layers onto it. Reblend my shadow. Like so. Okay. Gonna continue to work his nose area. This is dry, and so I'm gonna look at it a little more, and I'm gonna define the nostrils a little bit just because it'll help me see it better. When you make something like a nostril, they are also generally not just one color. Again, if you just trace it in with a sharp line, it's gonna look cartoony. So look carefully at the picture and you'll see there's a darker area that shows like that's the deepest part of the nostril, and then you can pull the color out on the rest, and it shows that it's going in rather than just looking like you drew in a circle there. Okay, now this has like a little crease that goes up that way. Like that. Except it doesn't so much right there, but it's just a crease. And there's like a little crease right here. And of course that's too obvious, so we're gonna blend him in. Okay. He's also got these like dirty black kind of spots on him. We'll deal with those in a minute here. I want a little bit of this pink that's more purpley. And it's almost like I'm making a, not a crease, but it's like his nose is not just flat. So what I want to create is showing that there are some areas that go in and some areas that come out. On his mouth, I can see there's an area right there that kind of comes in. And I can see that underneath this nostril, there's like a deeper area right here. And I'm putting these in pretty faintly because I don't want it to be really, it doesn't go way in. It's just little bits of texture to show you. Now this section is interesting. It has all those little black dots. Also, his mouth is going to have to get considerably darker. Pulling more neutral tint, since that's dry now, I'm going to go ahead and put in a darker line on his mouth. Okay. Hopefully you know what I'm going to say. Gonna blend that out. Do not want what looks like a drawn-in pencil line. I want smooth transition. Okay. And put a little darker color on the darkest areas of his nose too, which look to be there and up there. Blend a little bit of that out. I know it probably seems like, oh my gosh, you spend forever on this nose. But normally I would spend a long time on the eyes of an animal. But since these are pigs, I'm spending much more time on their little noses because that's what people look at a pig a lot of the time, is those noses. And so I want the nose to read as piggy nose. Okay, he's got a bunch of little black spots here. And so I'm going to drop some of them in, but I need some of them to be like tiny. Tiny, tiny, tiny. So my options there are either I use a super teeny brush to put them in. Hang on. I'm going to lift up a little bit of that black because it's not exactly what I wanted there. Blend that in a little. Just be a gray area. Okay, I feel like to make that black spotting, speckling look real, I'm gonna have to actually speckle it. So I'll show you how that works in a bit. In the meantime, I'm just gonna keep working this area. I feel like this section of his mouth should be shaded a little more too, because it's like down. And yeah, it's not too bad. I'm gonna look at that highlight up top, and I'm gonna pull some of this pink. The problem is I need clean water because my water has a little bit of a bluish tint to it right now that I don't want. Okay, so I'm gonna pull this around onto the highlight, and I'm just grabbing the pink that's already there and pulling it around. And that edge is still way too much of an edge, but we can blend that some more with another color. Come back to it. I'm going to turn this so my nose is sort of like that. All right, let's see. What do I want to do next? Nose is wet. Can't do much on that. So I'm going to take a little bit of this brownish mixture I have here. I think it's got Van Dyke brown and some other browns in it. And I'm going to start to define some of these little wrinkles that he's got up on his nose. Like this one goes here and over here and over there like that. And you should know it by now. We're gonna take those and blend it out. Let's see. There's a deep one over here. It's like, goes down, it comes back out a little bit. There's this one up here. Kind of have the edges of his snout area, and some of those have a shadow or a crease to them too. Definitely a shadow that goes around the snout because the snout sticks out from the face. So, defining that snout area. I'm going to use more of this pinky purple mixture to put the shadow up here. So it goes kind of like that. Again, I'm leaving that lighter part because that's the highlight. It's like the sun on that little section. And it's not going to be as distinct as that by the time I get done. I don't want it to be quite that obvious. But starting out with it like that helps me a little bit to see it. Another wrinkle like here. These wrinkles that I already kind of put in, they go down the side of the face. There's one here, kind of defining his nose a little more. These are coming like that. This one is kind of that same shape of the snout here, pulling it into making it a snout. And then here there's like a little bit of his nose that sticks up. And that part is going to blend into the hair up here. This goes more behind the face. And then there are a few little lines down here, like he's got this little jowly kind of line here. All right, I want to start to blend that highlight in a little bit more. So I'm going to add some fresh pink to this edge because it'll pull up more easily. And then I'm going to blend it this way quickly. And then I'm going to blend the edge as well into the highlight. And if you lose it, you can always take a different brush, come back to your highlight and pick it up some. I feel like that line might still need a little more blending, but it's okay. All right, let's see. I need the area behind the nose to read as being behind, back there. So I keep darkening that a bit. All right. Working with some gray. I come back here to those spots that showed as looking like they went in on this nose, the deeper areas. And I'm going to reinforce that. I'm going to make them a little darker. Remember, if you make it darker, it tends to make it go back. If you make it lighter, it brings it forward. So that helps in shaping things. There's almost like a hanging area here. Okay. Now some of these creases here need more definition. So coming back over what was a brown layer, a darker layer that's more like black to give them more depth. And of course, then I'm going to blend that out. Okay. I'm going to do a little bit of a splatter on his nose where I have these dark spots. I'm going to take a break because for me, I can only stare at something for so long before I stop seeing it. I stop seeing the details, and that's a problem. Okay. I only want the splatter on like a really small area. So I need something either with a hole like that, or I need to cover it with pieces of paper. Whatever you need to do, but you need to define the space. I've got this one section right above that little center of the nose crease, like right there, that has these little splattered spots. Okay, so I've put some black on this chisel blender, and I just take it and I'm spraying it a little bit like that, and it wants to go far, so watch out because you don't really want to get it on the rest of the painting. I'm going to take a look and see what that looks like and decide, is that the look I wanted? It works. There's some more that kind of comes off the side of his nostril here. So I'm going to come back, get a little more. And that went everywhere but what I wanted, where I wanted it to go. About right there. Okay. I think I got somewhere I wanted it. This works well for sand too, if you need like a sand effect. And a little of that just like under his like right in there. There. Okay. Now my fingers are all yucky. But you can see I got some bits there that look more like just dirt on his nose. And that was what I was looking for. And if you end up with too many of them, or you just want to combine, you can go back and blend them out with a brush. I just wanted to darken that area. And I'm going to take a little, I don't know, this is a 3-0 brush, tiny brush. And I'm going to add just a few little spots and see what I think of that, because he's got more dark spots going on up here on his nose, kind of over here and under that little area. It's got a couple that could go up along this lip of his nose. I said I was going to leave him alone for a little while, and I really am. All right, I'm taking a pig break. All right, back to work on my little piggy here. I think I'm gonna give the snout a bit of a rest. I'm gonna work on some of the hair that's on the face. So I'm gonna pull burnt sienna over here, a fair bit of burnt sienna, because this piggy's very reddish orange. And I find burnt sienna works well for animals to get that reddish orange color. If I don't feel like it's quite orangey enough, then I can pull in some Quin red or something like that to really red it up. But most of the time, the burnt sienna is sufficient to get that color. And I'm going to take my Rigger Zero, and I'm going to pick up some of that orange. And looking back at my reference photo to make sure I've got these colors, it's kind of darker over here because it's in shadow. There's also a dark area here because that area is like behind the head, like this is his eye. Okay, so there's like an eye socket there. And this area back here is also in shadow a bit. So even before I put the hair on, I'm going to kind of darken it up just a little bit. And I can see that his other eye is here. Okay, like that's the top of his eye, and then right here underneath it is where his eye would be, but I can't really see it because it's so far turned to the side, but it needs to kind of be there in the shadows. All right, so going back here, getting my burnt sienna, and I'm just going to start putting some hair texture in, paying attention to the direction that the hair goes on my reference photo. And on that eye area, I want it to come up along the eye like that. And when I get to my gouache step, there are actually some hairs like eyelashes that come down this way into this black. And so I will put those in with gouache, but I will not worry about that yet because we're not there. Right now, I just need to get that orange fur in there. Okay. These hairs are coming up this way until they get there, and then a few of them are kind of coming out. This is almost like a wrinkle from leaning on his brother here. So some of these hairs are coming up that way, whereas these are going back on the body like this. Okay, there's also a darker line going from here to here because this is like the back of his head. And then it gets lighter after that, so it's like dark across here just to kind of draw it in. These are going up on his ear. Probably gonna go and put like another layer in on that dark area after I do this first layer to make it nice and dark. I need some up here where it'll be lighter. What I try to do when I'm doing these fur textures is I try not to think too hard about it. It's really easy to overthink fur, and if you do that, it looks too planned, and then it doesn't actually look like fur. It's easy to end up with just a bunch of dashes on there that you're like, what was that supposed to be again? Because it doesn't read as fur. I'm kind of holding my brush upside down here because I want the thin strokes to be going up, and it's hard for me to do that at this angle. The other thing I could do is turn it upside down, but I'm all right with working kind of upside down with my brush a bit. At the moment you can see I'm just kind of doing the whole thing in red because this piggy's face is mostly this reddish orange color, mostly. Alright, he does have some black areas worked in, so I'm going to pull out a little neutral tint and put it up here. My neutral tint is getting low, but I'm trying to use it all up so that I can replace it with a different brand. So I'm going to work it all out of there. Okay. So I pulled the neutral tint out. I'll pick up a little bit of that. And I'm going to put in some black spot areas. He's kind of got some here on his face. Okay. Maybe just a little bit of one there. And then he has one that kind of ends up going behind his ear over here. Okay. Line this eye just a little bit more. All right, now I've done with all the other fur. I'm gonna do the same thing here with this guy. I'm gonna take a wet brush and I'm gonna start to go over that fur. And I want to blend out a lot of the texture. It's all right to get it fairly wet if you want to. The wetter it is, the more of that texture you will lose. So, just depends on how much you want to lose.
Gosh, you can tell much more lenient some teachers are than other. Example, the animal sciences teacher, his thing is 3 absences and you drop a grade point, 4 and you drop another, and then 5 is instant fail the class. Whereas this is all in English. Count 2 is 7 absences is a drop in your grade, 8 is another, and then 9 is a failure.
That's a lot of absences.
So you get 6 absences and you won't be penalized for it.
Yes, sir.
I don't intend to use any of those, but just shows how much more lenient some teachers are than others, I guess.
Right.
Oh, they're starting to look like pigs now.
They are, aren't they?
And as you said, they are very hairy pigs.
They are very hairy pigs. They're fuzzy pigs.
Yes. He did describe in the animal science class what we would have been doing if we went in person to go do stuff. He said, too bad, because he thought the most fun thing would be going to farms and like his example was milking the cows or running some of the machines that do that. And he said, my favorite, or students' favorites in the past with that, was they'd have 10 cows and they would teach you the rating scale on how to appraise cattle. And then they see if you can, correctly appraise the cattle that they give you to appraise.
You can feel free to tell him that his students are welcome to show up at our house, and I have 5 goats that they are welcome to milk at any point in time during the semester.
Yeah, he said though, so that was apparently the favorite was appraising cattle.
I see.
I said that probably could be fun.
Yeah.
Or could have been fun, yeah.
We do that. They do that with goats too. They appraise them.
Well, you have to appraise you can appraise almost any animal, like at all, but specifically, apparently around here, especially, there's a lot of places that you can do that with cows more specifically.
Yeah.
Said there's some on like 10 million cows in Tennessee or something like that.
That's a lot.
But then we have like 22 million poultry or something like that. So yeah, a little bit more. Lots and lots of chickens, especially.
Yeah. I want this nose area a little more pink, so I'm adding in some more pink. I'm sure everyone enjoys the little interruptions that we get here. All right. I'm gonna work this ear some because the inside of the ear needs to be done. So this ear has a lot of pink to it. It also has some of that burnt sienna coming in. So I'm gonna start, I think, with some pink. It has this layer kind of on the top of it, like this is the outside of the ear basically. It's got the red color coming up here, and I'm going to want to darken some of that so that it really reads as being the outside of the ear. But for now, I just want to see the pink. Then inside of the ear has a little, I just added a little tiny bit of purple, not purple, but I have some here on my palette that had just a little bit of blue in it, so I added that in, and I'm coming over here in the ear. This is just kind of starting to put a layer on the ear. We're going to get darker. There's a round lobe here, and I'm surprised I didn't draw that in more, but apparently I didn't. But there's going to be a darker area here. Turn it back right here. Let's see. There's a darker area there that's like the inside starting to go down here. You can connect those, that's fine. And then there's going to be a light, and then underneath this earlobe is going to be a shadow to show that it's behind. So I'm just kind of thinking this out, thinking where things are. I'm going to grab some light Payne's gray, and I'm going to go ahead and mark in this shadowed area, because that's going to help define the bottom of the ear for me. And I'm going to blend that out. And he also, not only does he have this fairly dark shadowing here, because it's, you know, it really is casting a shadow on the body, but he also has some like spotting on the ear. So all that to say, I'm going to take this color, I'm going to deepen that up some more, coming towards this middle part of the ear, which is going to get some darker color in a minute. There's also kind of a wave going on here. Let's start to put that in. Wanting a highlight on this ear to show that it is a round edge. Okay, I want it to, this darker color to blend into the highlight, but I want to keep a light spot here. And then I'm coming on this other end, and I also want to blend on this side so that the shadow blends up onto the ear as well. Okay, like that. The middle of the ear has some of this, what do you call it? Burnt sienna color in it. So I'm gonna put a little bit of that in there. This is going to come even more to life when we bring in the gouache and put some hairs on it more. Just can't really put the good hairs on it. Making some more of this that's a little bit purpley, and just shadowing some more. Turn them all weird ways. Let's see. This section, it's going to get a bunch of white hairs coming over it. I'm not going to worry about that too much. I'm going to blend these areas. This needs to get, not that dark, but it needs to get darker towards this middle, because that's like where it goes down into the ear canal. So I want that to be the darkest. Okay. Now he did have that like spot here on the ear. So put a little spot in it. Actually kind of goes up like that. All right. Pulling back to my rigger 0, I'm grabbing some more burnt sienna, And I'm going to come up onto the ear with it now on this part that is like the hairy side of the ear, the outside of the ear. And I want the effect of some hair coming on here. We are going to come back to this with gouache. I'm positive, but I also want this. And I lost a lot of texture here. I'm going to put a little bit of it back in. And then of course I'm going to take some of it away again because that's what we do. Also, he's got an ear here that's going behind this other pig's ear. It's going to be difficult to show because it's barely really in the picture. But I'm going to put some pink in. We'll see what we can do. I just need the hint of an ear back here. Because there's going to be hair from him going up onto this ear, and hair from that pig going onto the ear, and so I don't really need to see it. I just need kind of the hint that it's there. Okay. Turn him around a bit because I'm going to put some hair in this section. I suppose first it would help to pull a little more burnt sienna down here. Go. Okay. Now, he's got some little hairs. They're darker hairs that come down like this into his eye area. Some of those I almost need even my super duper tiny brush to put in, but I'm going to put a few to start here. Okay, and then he's got hairs going up right onto this ear. So I'm going to let them go right onto the, ooh, that's way too much paint on my brush. It's all right, we're going to blend it out. Not a big deal. So these are all kind of coming out from the ear, from the eye area. He's got just a few little hairs that come out of there. And then here, these hairs are coming out like that. We've got a bunch washing down from the eye, like that. And then here, he's got a section behind this little thing here where there's almost a white area. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to get a really light wash. So I still want it to look like fur. So I'm going to do a really light wash. I'm going to keep it light there. But it's not going to have that darker textured stuff that the other one does. Okay. Keep working this section, making it hairy. Now under his chin, there are little hairs that come here. They're going to be gouache. No way around it. There's also more of those little black spots coming in over in this area and even into this. But he's got kind of a little bit of a mane going on coming down here. So we'll put in some of that, and it goes right into that dark part here. It's underneath. All right, now I want some Van Dyke Brown. And Van Dyke Brown is a little more of a reddy brown. Put it right next to the burnt sienna, and you can see it has kind of those reddish tones. And what I want to do is, in the areas where it was darker, I'm going to take a little bit of the burnt sienna and some of that, and I'm going to kind of darken them up. So like here on the top of the ear, I see some darker browns. I'll put them in. I'm sure I said on the last pig that fur is very rarely just one color. You almost always need 2 or 3 colors that you kind of blend together to make the color that you're going for. And you can use some darker colors mixed in to show the darker areas of the face sometimes. But sometimes it's just that there really are all these dark bits in it. In this case, I see browns in this painting, in this picture. And so I want to put some of those in. Here around his eye, he definitely has some darker areas. And I do realize that to some extent this is like looking like just a mass of lines. But we're gonna go back and we're gonna take out some of that texture. He's got some dark sections here, and they come down into that, and a few here. Let's see. On his face, coming down from his eye, there's kind of a line like that in it. And then as the fur starts to come out here behind his ear, it's starting to turn. Some of it is going this direction too. Okay, before I go further, I'm gonna go ahead and take a minute to blend. So, going back in with my wet brush, and I'm gonna go ahead and blend out a lot of the texture I've put in here. And I know some people are like, why do you go back? And you took all that time to put that texture on there, and now you're like getting rid of it. Well, it just looks more natural that way. It makes the colors blend together, and it just gives you more of a fur effect. Always remember, if you take too much texture out, you can put it back in. You just go back with your bigger brush and put it back in. No big deal. In some ways, watercolor is not very forgiving in that some mistakes are very hard to erase. But there are some that it's just really not that bad, and you can fix things that you don't like. Your little beard is cute. There was one section here that was more white. Kind of in that area. Let's see if I can lift up just a little bit. Give it a lighter spot. Okay. And then here around the eye, he has some distinct areas. I'm going to try to deal with those. But I probably need to let that dry first. While I'm letting it dry, I'm going to come down here to his little snout. And I'm going to put some more little spots and stuff in here because he's got spots alongside this part of his snout, and this actually keeps going down here like that. And there's even a few more little creases kind of coming down this way. But the spots kind of come all out from here, from the side of his face. My head in the camera again. I don't know if these are actually spots that are on the pig or if they're dirt. I don't know if my pig here is a dirty pig or just a very randomly spotted pig. I don't know. It's hard to say. Let's see. Some of these move right down that direction. Just a few in there. Stand back a little again. Okay. Got number 2 here. And I'm taking a little bit of that purple. It's not really purple. I took a little bit of my pink that I originally made and I grabbed just a little bit of blue to put in it. So it's sort of purpley, but sort of not. And I'm just gonna deepen some of these wrinkles with a little bit more color. Maybe a little up here. behind the snout here to make it stand out a little more. Okay. Standing back a little bit. Get a better look at it. There are kind of some general areas kind of coming down from there that are darker. Okay, it's not as distinct as that, so we'll fade that a little bit. And these spots are a little more blendy, so we'll blend them a bit. Blend a few of these other ones. Okay, I'm going to mess with his eye a little bit more. Back to my number 2. I'm gonna have to make some more pink here soon. So I'm getting some of the pink. I'm mixing it with a little blue because I want something I can shade with. And the way I see this eye, there's like an area right there that's shaded, and there's kind of like the eye socket almost has a bit of shading to it, so blend that in. Then I'm gonna go along the eyelid, doing this first with that purple that I just made, and I'm gonna blend that down. Okay, then I'm getting a smaller brush. This is a 0. And with my 0, I'm going to grab neutral tint. And I'm also going to go along that eyelid to darken it. And then I'm going to blend that down. Blend it on both sides of the line. You don't really want a sharp line. Okay, so one thing I still see on this is he has some little dark hairs that go into this eye area, and I want to do those, but I need a different brush for that. Let me see. I have this 20-0 liner. It is a tiny, tiny, tiny liner. That might work. Also have a 10-0 liner. I think I'm going to go for the 10-0 liner. But I really do need it dry for this. And this is something that could wait until the end, but I want to put a few of them in just so I see what it looks like and whether I'm going to be happy with it. So I'm going to pick up some sepia and I'm going to mix it with some of that burnt sienna. That should just give me a dark brown that still has a hint of the red to it. Sepia, burnt sienna. Okay, and this is a liner brush, so it can make long strokes. Just kind of looking at where those appear to go on my picture, my reference photo. Still a little wet down underneath. You can make the tiniest of hairs with this thing. I also certainly see some like lashes coming down from the eye. I think that eye needs a bit more lining too. It faded. So let me pull some neutral tint, and I'm just gonna reline that line of the eye. Go back to my zero brush for a minute, and run that out. Back to those little lashes. Okay. And there's some of these hairs that come out like this. Sometimes with the little hairs, it's best to just do them fast. Because then you don't think about it too much. Right now, those are a bit darker than I really like, but I'm gonna wait and see how they dry, and I may be totally fine with them after they dry. All right. I'm going to take a break from piggies, and I will come back to these guys in a while. All right, getting back to work on this little piggy. I believe what I'm going to do is work on this section of the red pig, and that should finish up my first pass over the red pig, and then I can move on to a first pass on the next pig. So I'm going to want my zero rigger brush again, and I'm going to work this fur very much like I've worked all the other fur. I'm going to put in red, mainly red, and this is kind of a light. It's lighter than the head. So the head has a much deeper red on it than this area does. So I'm going to try to keep this lighter, maybe add some yellow ochre in with the burnt sienna so that I get a lighter color. And again, I have not washed my palette in between because I'm just using the same colors. So let's get some yellow ochre on there, and then I'll get some burnt sienna and mix that in with it. And I will try to keep this watered down a little bit more so that I keep a lighter color back here. But then we also have black spots across it. And the main thing I want to pay attention to as I'm doing this is what direction the hair goes. And I'm mainly seeing that there's a curve like this. So I'm just going to start putting in hair marks. Over the red sections. I'm not sure there's a whole lot to talk about on this. It's just kind of putting in these hairs. As I've said on the other hairs, I'm usually trying to mainly not overthink the hairs, but to just get in there and randomly put in hair. I'm working around these areas where I already started to put in where the darker spots will be. It doesn't matter if I get the red color in with those darker spots, because the darker spots will cover it up. And in general, you want in fur for the colors to kind of overlap and blend together to some extent. So I'm just going to come through here, and I'm going to keep putting in that red. Trying not to get it on to the third pig, really. Piggy has lots of little black spots on his back. So we're going to be putting those in next. And they're fairly dark black, so probably going to need a couple of layers. Just like I said, that one needs more layers of black on it because the black just isn't really dark enough the way it is right now. Okay, now I would put some more neutral tint out here for the black. And I don't see brown really mixed in with the black. It's mainly just black. So I'm just pulling neutral tint out, giving myself a nice wet area of neutral tint to work with. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start putting black fur areas in. And you'll see as they dry that they're going to dry more of a light gray. And like I said, that's okay. We're going to come back and darken them later. Already these are much lighter than what I'm going to want in the end on this. Keeping my strokes generally going in the same direction so that I have this fur texture showing the direction of the fur. totally okay if it looks sort of sloppy. It's got a big black area down here. This, I'm doing some strokes that go up and some that go down. Okay, so then you're going to take, as we've done with the other fur, I'm going to take a wet brush and I'm going to first go over some of the reddish areas before I get a lot of black on my brush, because once I've gone into that black, it's going to be kind of contaminated with that gray. But I'm going to go over these red areas first and just take out a little bit of that texture. Okay, and then I'll go over the blacker areas. I'm going to take some of that texture out as well. Knowing full well I'm going to be coming back to these black spots because there's no way they're dark enough as they are. All right, so I believe that is my first take on this second pig. I'm going to come back to him. I'm going to darken colors. I'm going to put more things in, but I'm going to leave him alone for now, and I'm going to come back to him later.